Let me make sure I have the right thing. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
All right. Awesome. So thanks for coming to hang out today. I'm going to be talking about Home Assistant and some of the things that you can do with it. And, you know, one of the biggest concerns that a lot of people have with IoT devices, especially with George back there, you know, talking about certain IoT devices and web APIs and all that, is that all of your data is kind of getting, you know, shared amongst all the servers of the big name companies and things like that. So Home Assistant is kind of a way to, you know, keep your data local and deploying it within your own network so that you can have kind of that control of data. You know, there are devices out there that will send your data to China, and you know, some of them won't, and there's ways around that depending on what you have. But today I'm going to kind of show you what Home Assistant is and some of the like big features and notes about why I personally chose Home Assistant over some of the other platforms that are out there. We're going to take a look at some of the integrations, also look into some devices that I have and securing those devices. And then we're also going to talk about how to get started with it and just kind of show off a couple of devices that I've made and hacked to work for my my home automation system. Let me go to the next slide. So who am I? I know a lot of you have already met me before, but for those who haven't, I'm 1080p on Discord. My name is Andrew in real life. I am a lead audio video installer for a home automation integrator. So we actually do home automation, but on a much larger scale for larger homes. And that system that we use is actually a lot more locked down than what I'm going to show you today. And we'll kind of go over like the, you know, some of the pros and cons with that. Former IT manager of a family business that we had running for about 30 years. I am definitely not that old. I've only, you know, been doing that for a while. And I was a former tech for an MSP. I'm also the king of breaking shit and then maybe deciding to fix it later after a beer or snack or 1 week or 2 weeks later. I've been known to yeah, just break things and sometimes not fix them until later. And I'm also a cybersecurity enthusiast. I don't work in the cybersecurity realm right now. And I'm also a script kiddie in training. I say that because I've been working on Hack the Box and some things like that. So I'm very interested in the space and also on the networking side of things about keeping my network secure and all of that. So let's get into, again, what is Home Assistant? So Home Assistant is this home automation platform that's designed to be locally managed within your own personal network. It's also privacy focused, so all of the data that is in your system never gets shared outside of that, depending on what kind of devices you have and how they can kind of be manipulated. And again, we'll go into that a little bit later. There's over 1,600 different integrations that you can do with Home Assistant. All of the big name devices are pretty, you know, flow pretty well into it. There are also some really like small companies that don't necessarily have like a big name or anything like that, but they can definitely be integrated into your system. One of the downsides of Home Assistant currently is that it's still in beta. There are a lot of things that you can do from a brand new perspective of going in and integrating your own different types of IoT devices and customizing your screens to do exactly what you want. But not everything is perfect, and sometimes it requires just a little bit of coding. Home Assistant also is fully open source, so they have their GitHub code up and available. They're constantly updating it, and that's one of the other things that I found that was one of the main reasons why I chose to go with Home Assistant. And I've been I've used Home Assistant for probably the past, I want to say 3 or 4 years. Way back when it wasn't easy to integrate things at all. You had to basically go into text editors and go into Nano and add your own integrations kind of manually. So it's a lot easier now. And again, we'll see that in a little bit later. So again, some of the reasons why I chose Home Assistant, why I think a platform like this is really good for somebody who does have IoT devices in their house and is kind of more, privacy conscious. There is no monthly subscription service to operate Home Assistant. It doesn't cost you anything to maintain it. Of course, you do have to have some type of device that will run the platform itself. But I mean, you can do that with pretty much any computer. It doesn't use a whole lot of resources. I run mine in a virtual machine that doesn't use a lot of resources. And I put the hint Wink there because Wink is another IoT company recently that decided that they were going to charge all of their client, or not charge, they were going to switch to a subscription service. And they basically gave all their users 7 days to either pay them $5 a month to continue using all of their devices or basically make them inoperable. So open platform sources like this get you out of that box. You won't have to worry about all of your devices kind of just up and quitting like Wink did. They won't leave you high and dry. The hint for this one says Nest and Logitech. Nest, when they got bought by Google, they wound up disabling their API access. So a lot of their devices weren't necessarily easy to reintegrate back to third-party systems. And Logitech at one point almost decided to take the Wink route, disabling their APIs. So a lot of people that use like Harmony hubs and those all-in-one type of remote devices basically at one point weren't able to use them outside of what they already had programmed. The system is absolutely fully customizable. There are a ton of themes that you can choose from. And again, with the amount of integrations that they have, you can have multiple screens or multiple tabs, and then you can have a fully customized screen where it will show you everything that you want to know in that particular tab. So for example, I have one dedicated just to thermostats and temperatures. I have another one dedicated to a specific test bed where I can go in and see like, all right, what are my sensors saying and how can I take this data and either make it more pretty to put more on the front end or anything I need to troubleshoot. Bring your own device. This is really cool because you don't necessarily have to buy the devices that are out there these days, like where you get from, Best Buy. You can actually build your own with, little to almost no coding. And that, for me personally, kicks into my tinkering side of things. Remember going back, I like breaking things, but I also like making my own things. And we'll talk about that in a little bit and show you again some of the things that I've built that has not only kind of saved me a little bit of money, but again, it doesn't allow anybody to kind of take that data and use it for analytics or anything like that. There's also a huge community, just massive. They have their own Discord chat and forums, and then the overall level and support and the amount of volunteers that are participating in this project is crazy. I mean, I can jump in the Discord and ask, 1 or 2 questions at any point in the day, and usually I can get a pretty quick answer. The title for this one, of course, is self-explanatory. I blame my wife for this. How I got into the whole smart home automations and things like that. She bought me a Google Home, and I started messing around and telling her to do things, and I just kind of got bit by the bug. and it got a little crazy. It took a little while for me to build up to those devices. But what she didn't realize is that it was going to go to this massive, smart home scale. And I guess I don't want to say massive, but I have a lot of devices now than when I first started. So, went from a Google Home to all of this. So this next one here is just kind of a basic, very basic network diagram of everything that right now in my system integrates with Home Assistant. I have lights, virtual appliances, thermostats, audio and video. Like, again, all of these things are kind of easily integrated into the system, and kind of keeps everything at bay. So like if you look in the lights category, for instance, those aren't actual lights. These are little devices that you can install inside your light switch that you can still use your normal ordinary light switch, but they make them Wi-Fi controllable. And again, all the data goes into your system and does not go anywhere else. And I also wanted to touch on the virtual side of things, because you don't necessarily have to have physical devices to have a home automation platform, or to even have Home Assistant. I use a lot of these virtual appliances for either programming or communication. For example, the little cherry here is Pi-hole. That's a network-wide ad blocker. MQTT is the platform that I use for all of my devices that I've built to communicate back into the system. Node-RED down here at the bottom, which I'll show you guys, is a really good visual way of performing your automations. And it really helps me out because I'm very much a visual person. And then just a couple of other things like Web API, UPnP, and things like that. I know I just went through a lot. I wanted to go ahead and see if anybody had any initial questions before we keep going.
Nope.
Cool. All right, moving on. So what does it really take to get started? I mean, not a whole lot. You can buy a Raspberry Pi for $30 and deploy your own version. You can do it in a VM or a PC or anything. Again, it doesn't require a whole lot of power to keep track of these things. There's also multiple ways to install Home Assistant. If you already have like a Docker image stood up, you can integrate it in Docker. They actually have their own virtual machine, what they call HAS-OS, or Home Assistant Operating System, again, which is what I use. You can also do it completely manually via a virtual environment in Python 3, or anything that runs Linux. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of hardware requirements. In terms of some of the integrations, when you get down to like tinkering with things, or you want to manipulate some of the data, it does take a little bit of coding, and the basics of YAML language is really all you need. It didn't take me but a week to kind of figure out, all right, how many spaces and tabs. And if you already know a programming language, it makes it even easier. And then after that, it's time. Like I said, it's taken me kind of 3 years just to, keep building and building and building upon it. And I'm learning everything as I go on top of that. So it is, it is a little bit of time consuming, but again, for the amount of, privacy and stuff that you get out of it, it's definitely worth it than going out and buying, like a SmartThings hub or something like that. So some of the integrations I want to talk about. One of the first things that I kind of put up on the screen here is Node-RED. And like I said, it's amazing. I mainly personally, again, use it for all my home automation stuff, but you can do endless amounts of API calls and things like that within Node-RED and setting timers. So for things like executing commands, like I said, I'm very much a visual person. So Node-RED to me helps me out a lot in building out those automations and kind of getting everything down and kind of set right, and getting it tested. So again, that's just one of them. They also have their own Android and iOS applications, which just came out very recently. So of course, it allows you to see your Home Assistant platform from wherever you are, and they actually have integrations that you can build within it. So the app also has the capability of showing you like your battery life or location if you choose to do so, whether or not your phone is charging, and you can build automations off that as well. And it's also, at least with the Home Assistant operating system or the virtual machine, it kind of acts as its own mini server. Some of the integrations that to note there, you can deploy a Ubiquiti web server, or you can deploy Pi-hole for network-wide ad blocking, or any of those devices that are not devices, but any of those types of systems that you may just want to say, I just want, one virtual machine to kind of do it all, and it will build upon that and kind of add into it. That way you have one place to kind of go and take care of everything. So the Home Assistant system also, again, you can keep it local or you cannot keep it local. And what I mean by that is you can, stand it out to the internet and have the accessibility to control your system from wherever you are. All your data is logged and purged whenever you want it. So you can set times and dates where you can kill all of your data in 3 days and kind of start from fresh. You don't have any of that backlog in case something happens. It can be front facing to the web using an SSL. It also has two-factor authentication built into it, and of course a normal secure password, which is, as we all know, very important. I put a link here. Don't be like these guys. This is a link to Shodan. The standard port for Home Assistant is 8123. So if you go on Shodan and search for the port 8123, you can actually see a couple of Home Assistant instances out there, even though they're password protected, that don't have any type of security. So just make sure that if you stand it up, whether you're in your own environment or deploying it from, things like AWS, of course, it's best to keep it as secure as possible. Some of the devices that you integrate into the system, there's almost no way to kind of block them from being able to not reach out to the internet. So for example, I do have Google Homes in my house, and I can't block them from the internet because they require the internet, and they also have certain protocols that I can't necessarily block out of my system. So there are, of course, certain devices that you won't be able to completely secure, but for the other ones, you can work off of a smart plug and just set it up. And as soon as you set it up in your network, you can block it from accessing the internet, and it will still be completely functional because it's running off of your local IP instead of relying on an internet connection. And Home Assistant does have a subscription service. I know we were talking about Wink. This is kind of separate. The subscription service is basically ease of use. It gives you the opportunity to not have to build out your own SSL certificates and go through that whole process. They charge a monthly fee for you to be able to securely and externally access your system, and also integrate some devices that require a lot more in-depth configuration. For example, the Google Homes and the Amazon Alexas, and I'm sorry if I triggered any of those, but those can kind of get a little picky because of the way their API keys are set. So Nabakasa kind of takes care of that as a service, and that is actually a service within Home Assistant that the creators actually created just for this particular system. So just some of the cool projects that I've built and kind of hacked. The one on the left there is actually a device from Wink. When I found out that their devices, a lot of people were selling their devices because they didn't want to pay the subscription charge. It is what they call a relay. So it fits into your light switch and has, you can do 2 light switches, of course, fully customizable, so you can do them for lighting scenes. It has temperature and humidity and a motion sensor in there as well. And it's an Android-backed system. So rooted it, basically got it, stripped it down to the bare minimum OS, and then threw Home Assistant on it. And from there, I now have a what once was a $300 light switch from Wink that cost me $50 in a few hours of time to put into a light switch, so I have control of my system from wherever I'm at. And I'll show you guys because I'm still working on it. If you see my camera, that I'm still kind of working on it. It's probably not, it's not going to show it because of the background. Anyway, that's one of the latest things that I've been working on. The one on the right, this is a multi-sensor using these little Node MCU ESP devices. These little guys are really cool because you can get them for $3 or $5 each, and they have built-in Wi-Fi and enough capabilities to be able to do things like open or close your garage, do temperature sensors like I have here. This is just a little temperature and humidity sensor I have connected to it that's in my server closet, just to make sure that all my temps are nice and toasty because it never goes anywhere below like 78 degrees in there. And these get a little bit more on the tinker side and the coding side of things, but these devices can be flashed with any type of platform or any type of coding through Arduino. The specific one I use is ESP Home. That kind of, again, makes it a little bit easier to configure it and customize it and integrate it into Home Assistant. And then finally, the one that took me the most amount of time and is my, I would say, biggest project to date, because I broke it and then I waited for a few months and then I figured out, like, all right, how am I going to, fix this? And I don't have a picture of the backside of it, but it's using one of those same little Node MCUs to communicate. And this is my cat feeder. There's a bunch of different sensors that go into this too. There's a motion sensor. So when the cat walks by, it will notice that, it'll notice the cat walks by. It doesn't feed him or anything like that. Else he would probably be 25 pounds by now. There's an ultrasonic sensor that sits directly under the cap that will tell me how much food is left in the dispenser and when I need to refill it. And then there's, again, a temperature and humidity sensor. I bought like 20 of them, and I didn't have one in the kitchen, so that was nice to kind of have to keep the house nice and cool. And then there's a servo motor that controls that little spindle. It dispenses out the food, and we'll kind of take a look. I want to show you guys kind of some of the automations that I have within Node-RED to kind of get that going. And then finally, there are, again, a ton of different resources with Home Assistant that you can explore. Some of these are the ones that I have kind of personally followed. There's the Discord, there's multiple subreddits. The home automation subreddit is really good to kind of, get yourself, get your feet wet. And then a bunch of different YouTube platforms, the Hookup, Bra Home Automation, which I would use for, a couple of things if you're interested in it. His channel hasn't been active lately. And then Dr. Z's on YouTube. If you want to see some absolutely crazy automations and just how far in depth some people go, I highly recommend looking at Dr. Z's on YouTube. His house has lights, thermostats. I mean, he's got lights outside of his house, inside of his house. It's crazy the amount of time that is kind of spent on systems. So that concludes this part of the presentation. Before we go any further, I do want to show you guys my actual home automation or home assistant platform, just to kind of give you guys an idea of the amount of customization and how these, how some of these sensors and things work. So before we do that, does anybody have any questions?
So from a pen testing standpoint, what would you say is the amount or degree of hardening that a lot of this stuff has gone through? Because, like you said, a lot of the stuff isn't externally facing, but, call it paranoia. What if somebody's, trying to break into it, into this particular, or compromise this particular setup? Like, what kind of hardening is done? What kind of security measures are in place to make sure that that there is no compromise?
So that's a really good question. Again, the system is, again, customizable where you can have it externally facing and, secure the web application. So again, the two-factor authentication, the password, the SSL certificate, but internally, as far as pen testing goes, your system is only as good as your network. So my only ports that are exposed on my network currently are 443, which we all know 443 is the HTTPS protocol, but that's it. I have 80, I have 443, and then one other that's completely separate, and that's about as far as I can answer in terms of that. Like I said, your system is as good as your network is. And one of the other things that I didn't touch on that I wanted to and kind of forgot about is that when you have a network of devices like this, it's best practice to put them in their own VLAN and kind of segregate them from your own internal devices, your management devices and things like that. That way you can set it up to where only certain devices that need to talk out to the internet can talk out to the internet. And then the remainder, block them out from any other local IPs. So for example, all of the IoT devices that I have in my system are on their own VLAN, and they're only allowed to talk into the Home Assistant system, and the devices that need internet will talk out to the internet, and that's pretty much it. And I hope that kind of answered your question.
Yep, but also, from a pen testing standpoint, IoT devices are somewhat notorious for, like a lot of guys, what they'll do is they'll go out and buy some of these things and, try to farm them for CVEs. So oftentimes, they find some fairly egregious vulnerabilities. So that's kind of where it's coming from too. Is as I fully agree with you that a lot of this stuff is based on your own internal network. If your internal network is garbage, then good luck. But I was just wondering if you also knew anything about the particular IoT devices. Not just what hardening, but what measures are being taken to make sure that these are fairly secure, or at least reasonably so.
Yeah, and I can't say exactly what devices are hardened. It's kind of dependent on what you choose as far as your IoT devices. Like I said, I can't really manipulate the Google Homes, because if I do, they'll go crazy. So, and that's kind of one of the other reasons why I chose to kind of build my own devices, in some of my systems, or some of these devices, instead of going out and buy them, like specific motion sensors and whatnot, just to kind of keep them from exiting the network. And to be honest, I really can't say much more in regards to that. Just, we have a lot of IoT devices that are out there right now, and there are, of course, vulnerabilities that can happen and will happen. So it's basically just down to really the devices you choose.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Cool. Are there any other questions?
I don't have I guess a question specifically. Maybe I do. I guess because you kind of just answered it. It's really down to whatever you pick and whatever you choose. Are there any specific manufacturers or companies that you personally, after experimenting with all this, you kind of just know to avoid them?
Yeah, yes and no. There are certain companies that I have chosen over time to use, and then certain ones that there are ones that you really should avoid, and they actually can be avoided with a little bit of coding and programming. So, for example, a really popular camera that's on Amazon right now. Why can't I think of the name of it? Of course, it's gonna bother me until I figure it out. It's the Wise cameras. They're really cheap. They're really good in terms of the performance and what you can do with them. But if you are, just deploying them out in your system, in your home, you don't really have any idea what data it's sending back unless, you go directly into your firewall logs and kind of check and see what's going on. So a lot of the devices that I research, I can either go in and reprogram those to just do the specific functions that I need to and keep it off the network, or if they can be blocked from the internet, I'll do that within my VLAN. I guess another example would be the smart switches. So I have a TP-Link smart switch that as soon as I hit the button, it turns, it's just a light right now. But that device only requires me to set up the app and then integrate it into the app. And as soon as that's done, you block it completely from the internet, and then it's fully functionable. So the TP links are a good example of that, where you don't have to have internet access for those to be able to continue to communicate. I guess another example would be the Shelly devices is what they're called, that you install behind those light switches. They are they're actually my new favorite things, because I was going to go the light bulb route and go with like Philips Hue or the IKEA Trad-Frees, which I do have the IKEA Trad-Free lights. They're good at what they do, but those the Shelly devices that go into the light switch, they actually don't care what you do with your data. They actually have a protocol in there that says, okay, do you actually want to just use this locally, or do you want to be able to have external access from this, and you can choose which one you want. And that's, again, one of the main reasons why I chose them, is because, again, I can keep everything local, and I can keep that data from going elsewhere.
Cool. Okay, thanks.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, so I'm gonna move on and I'll show you guys. This is my Home Assistant system. So you're seeing it live as it's going on. This is actually production version. So you have, your weather, and I have all of my lights and all of that. House temperatures, so you can keep everything kind of monitored. And I actually use these to, in conjunction with the smart thermostat that I have to kind of keep the house cool. So even though those devices technically aren't integrated within that smart thermostat, I can use Home Assistant to kind of average out those temperatures and then kick on the heat or the AC whenever that threshold gets met. And then I have, garage door opener, again, one of those little node MCUs, those little ESP devices, literally just triggers the door to open and close. I have a little grocery list that I just added recently. This is really nice. Instead of having to look at the fridge or using any other different services. And then motion detection down here. Thermostats, including a radar. Again, these are just kind of keep everything nice and tidy and kind of keep an overall look of what's going on there. I have devices that will send data back to you to kind of tell you what you're playing and what's going on. So right now, Netflix is playing in the living room. I'm sure my wife is watching something. And then I have this here. This is really neat. This is an individually addressable LED strip that sits above my garage door, and it kicks on at night, and then it turns off at sunset. And you have all of these different effects that you can do and change for specific, holidays or whatever you want to do. Again, controllable by those little node MCUs. If you can tell, I really, really love those things. Some of the networking side of things, one of the integrations that I really like is the speed test. So it will do an hourly speed test on your network to kind of make sure that, if you see a drop in performance, then something might be going on with either, your ISP or something going on locally. So that is really nice to have, because I have seen it drop down before and actually had internet issues locally within my system, and it also does ping. I have Discord. This is literally just for fun, just to kind of keep track of, me when I'm online, when I'm offline. And then here, just again, a test bed of things that I have before I start bringing them over into the other side of things. So Node-RED, again, this is one of my favorite integrations. Back in Home Assistant, before you were able to kind of do things on your own in terms of you'd had to kind of program everything manually. And when they integrated Node-RED, again, this was one of those things where it was really good for me, because I'm more of a visual person, to kind of visualize my automations and exactly what's going on. So I have one here that's in the morning, certain lights kick on, and then at certain times it will flash certain lights to let me know that, hey, I need to, get up off the couch and go get ready and, go to work so I'm not late. One of the other cool things too is when you have the app and external access, you can actually send notifications to your phone and make actions based on that. So just as an example, right here, if it's the weekday and I'm at work and then I start driving after I leave home from work, it will send a notification to my wife to let her know, hey, I'm on my way home, in case I need to pick up anything. There's notifications if my server closet is too hot, if I forgot to open, or close the garage door at night, just lots of other things. Little bits here for my LEDs. When I open the garage, it does, this really cool effect that I just wanted to try out and wound up sticking. And it's even weather-based. If it's going to rain, then put on the rain effect. And if it's not, just, go back to the standard LEDs. And just some random events here. And just a little bit of Booleans So this is how my cat feeder rotates every day, twice a day. It used to be easier, but for some reason, when I went back to go into programming again, I had to go this route. I absolutely hate it, but that's the way it functions. And then you have like Visual Studio Code where you can go in and edit things. It has a map and a logbook, and I won't kind of go into those just for the sake of this is public. And that's pretty much it.
Hey, 1080p, I had a question that I wanted to ask before I forgot. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
What service are you using to send those text messages?
So it is within, again, it's within the Home Assistant app that you download, and I'm pretty sure it's either API or HTML5. I'm pretty sure it's HTML5 just because you have the ability to do those actionable notifications on the app itself.
You're able to through that app. Does that cost money? You're able to send those texts for free?
No, yeah, it's absolutely free. It doesn't cost you anything. So just as an example, if I go in to open the garage door here with the app that again connects to my system externally, it will send me a notification that says, hey, the garage door has been open. And then it gives you an actionable button at the bottom of it that allows you to close it.
Oh, got it. I'm sorry. I think I must have misunderstood. It's a notification, not a text. I'm sorry. I think that was my...
Yeah, you can absolutely do. You can go the text message route, and people have used other systems and integrated it into Home Assistant to where those notifications will work. Outside of it, but ever since they came out with the app and the ability to kind of communicate, through the app and the API calls, it's kind of gotten a lot smoother.
Yeah, that makes way more sense.
Cool. Does anybody have any other questions?
Just a really small one. What were the temperatures fluctuating or the bars fluctuating? Like, does that mean anything or?
Yeah, so the bars and the temperatures fluctuating as soon as it gets an update, it will fluctuate either left or right to kind of give you an idea if the temperatures in those certain spaces are increasing or decreasing.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
You can set a target temperature. So when you have the full 0% opacity, bar there, it's showing you the current temperature, and then there's a smaller one that's like I think 50%. That is that target temperature, and then of course you have a max with it as well. But like I said, as soon as that stuff gets updated, it will tell you whether or not it's either increasing or decreasing. And kind of when you guys saw earlier, my office, which I'm in right now, is 81 degrees. And it's very hot, and it will tell you also, it'll go through colors, and you can completely 100% again customize that to your absolute liking, whatever you want.
Awesome. Thank you.